Sentence fragments. What is a sentence? A sentence requires a subject, tells you who or what the sentence is about. A verb expresses action, tells what the subject does, or links the subject to other descriptive words, or describes a state of being. Note: sometimes you may have more than one subject and/or more than one verb. A sentence requires a statement of a complete thought. Examples: after class, Jason and I are meeting for lunch. A compound subject. I have to work today from noon until 10 o'clock. One subject, one verb. The debate lasted for 4 hours and highlighted the different policies of each candidate. One subject, two verbs. What is a fragment? Just as a bowl that shatters to the floor may break into pieces, a sentence fragment is a piece of a sentence. It often lacks a verb. It may lack a subject, or it could have a subject and verb, but not express a complete thought. Examples of fragments. Example: I going to the mall to shop. Not a complete verb. Example: spending lots of money at my favorite store. No subject. Example: while I am shopping. Subject and verb are present, but this group of words cannot stand alone independently and does not express a complete thought. Other examples of fragments. I heading to the mall. Not a complete verb. After I finish my classes for the day. Not a complete thought. For example, tennis, basketball, and baseball. No subject or verb. Going to the country for the weekend. No subject and not a complete verb. Note: if you write fragments in your essays, your teacher may write frag, a common editing symbol, in the margin to call attention to the error. You need to learn to recognize them and to be able to correct them. Can you identify fragments? Which of these is a sentence fragment? He listened. She telling a joke. Because she had experience. Saddleback, El Camino, coastline, and Cypress. After lunch, I will leave. Are you correct? If you selected the middle three, you are correct. She telling a joke is a fragment, for it does not have a complete verb. This could be corrected by adding is or was, is telling, or was telling. Because she had experience is a fragment. Even though it has a subject and verb, it does not express a complete thought. Saddleback, El Camino, coastline, and Cypress is a fragment because there is no subject or verb. He listened is a complete sentence, for it has a subject and a verb, and it expresses a complete thought. After lunch I will leave is correct, has subject and verb, and expresses a complete thought. One common type of fragment is the dependent clause fragment. Independent versus dependent. Let's look at the difference between an independent and a dependent clause. Both are groups of words containing a subject and a verb. However, an independent clause can stand alone as a sentence. It is independent in that way. Every sentence must have, therefore, at least one independent clause. Remember, each sentence must contain at least one independent clause. Dependent clauses. Some common words that indicate a dependent or subordinate clause are as follows: because, when, although, whenever, even though, relative pronouns who, which, that, since, after, until, if, as. Examples of dependent clause fragments. Because I have to get my car fixed. Although it appears to be running smoothly. Until you can pick me up from practice. When she jogged past the couple. If he is able to complete all his required classes. How to correct dependent clause fragments. If you write a dependent clause, you must attach it to an independent clause so that you have a grammatically correct sentence. How to correct dependent clause fragments. You must attach them to an independent clause. Let's look at the fragments from the last slide. Because I have to get my car fixed, I will need to take the bus to school this week. Corrected. My car smells funny when I drive it, although it appears to be running smoothly. Corrected. I will study in the library until you can pick me up from practice. Corrected. When she jogged past the couple, she noticed that they were arguing. Corrected. Ryan will graduate this year if he is able to complete all his required classes. Corrected. Other common types of fragments. Phrase fragment. A phrase is a group of words without a subject and/or verb. Here are some examples. After the rain. Into the fire. Worked with clay. A big fluffy dog. Correcting phrase fragments. Add the missing subject or verb. Attach the phrase to a sentence coming before or after, if appropriate. After the rain, a rainbow appeared. He rushed into the fire. She worked with clay. I would love to have a big fluffy dog. Explanatory fragment. This type of fragment gives information about a sentence which came before. It usually is missing a subject or a verb or both. This type of fragment often begins with words and phrases such as these. Words, phrases that may lead to explanatory fragments, as well as, especially, except, also, for example, for instance, including, like, such as, particularly. Examples of explanatory fragments. As well as my sister Jan. Also, Chemistry 11 and World History. Especially apple pie with ice cream. For example, my experience last summer at the mall. Like my reaction to my allergy medicine, including all my relatives and my neighbors, except my boyfriend and my best friend. How to correct this type of fragment. 1. Add the missing subject or verb or both. 2. Attach the explanation to the previous sentence. I am taking English, Math 200, and also Chemistry 11 and World History. Corrected. Many people have allergies to food, pollen, and also medications, like my reaction to my allergy medicine. Corrected. I love many desserts, especially apple pie with ice cream. Corrected. Review of key terms. 1. Phrase. A group of words that cannot stand alone. A phrase is missing a subject or verb or both. 2. Clause. A group of words that does contain a subject and a verb. There are two types. Independent clause can stand independently. Dependent clause cannot stand alone and must be attached to an independent clause. 3. Fragment. A piece of a sentence. It may lack a subject or verb, or it may not be able to stand alone and does not express a complete thought. Every sentence must have at least one independent clause. Wait, can you ever use fragments? You might notice sentence fragments in some types of writing. For instance, in the popular book Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, the first chapter contains a number of fragments. Or at least distrusts me. Entrails, no hissing. Just a squirrel. Pretty dress, says Gail. Are these errors? Fragments can be acceptable in certain types of writing, novels, short stories, informal writing, or other writing that records speech. For instance, you may find fragments in dialogue, hello, goodbye. In questions and answers, coming, sure. In exclamations, hooray, oh no, yeah. Important notes. Writers such as Collins do at times use fragments for dramatic effect. However, in the writing you do for classroom assignments, you should avoid writing sentence fragments. Review. How to correct fragments. Add the missing subject or verb or both. Sometimes, if it makes sense, you can attach the fragment to a sentence that comes before or after. It is important that you can recognize fragments in your writing and correct them as you edit your papers. If you are in the lab, please see an assistant for a quiz to test your knowledge of fragments.